Good evening and welcome to the Ashland Select Board meeting for September the 18th, 2019. This meeting is being broadcast live and recorded by the good folks at WACA-TV. Is there anyone in the room that is recording this evening? Seeing none, we'll open into the Pledge of Allegiance. So, Chief Alfano, if you can lead us tonight.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
So you may notice that we're a little short-staffed here at our table. One of our colleagues is away on business, Brandy is away on business, and Michael Herbert is away on a couple days of R&R. So we're going to, if there's no problem with the rest of the board, we can dispense with the vision and mission statement tonight.
Sure.
And move into citizen participation. And I know, Mr. Drake, you're here.
Good evening. My name is Robert Drake. I live at 366 Union Street. I'm here tonight to file a noise complaint against Honto's Restaurant. I voiced my concern about the noise problem back when the license was being transferred to the new owner. After that meeting, Ray from Honto's and I met to discuss the noise issue. He said that we should understand that they are in a business zone and we are in a business zone. After several discussions, we came up to agreement that if the noise became an issue, to call him or go by and see him. Since the beginning of August, the noise seems to be getting more noticeable. On September 7th, the noise was so bad that I could hear the words from the songs. I went to Honto's and talked to Ray. He instructed the guy to turn the music down. By 11:35, the music was again loud enough for me to hear it loud and clear with my windows closed, so I called the police. It seems we are in the same pattern we were in before. I did what he asked, but it seems that Ray told the guy to turn the music down just to appease me, and after I left, he put the music back up. In talking with several neighbors, I discovered they also had called the police that night. I'm asking for you, the selectmen and the police department, for help and guidance in order to resolve this issue. Thank you. And also, I've got 2 letters here from other neighbors that will state the same thing.
Okay, if you can provide those to us.
And
I believe you've got a neighbor, one of your neighbors here as well. If you choose to speak, by all means, be my guest. And then, Joe, you want to make a comment? And I think the chief has got some information for us as well.
Great, thank you. I'm Todd Roulette. I live on 17 Metropolitan, so I'm right behind the CVS, the second house behind Honto. The music, yeah, I can hear it. There's a faint boom, boom, a bass that I can hear, which is not necessarily my biggest complaint. I don't think I get as much as you do of the bass, but my thing is the motorcycles and the vehicles starting up at 11:30, 12 at night. I have a 4-year-old and a 7-year-old, and we got people that are starting up their motorcycles or vehicles and revving their engines, literally like it's bike weekend behind Honto. And, it's so loud that I can't imagine if a cop were stationed anywhere in the vicinity that they wouldn't be able to hear it too. It's loud to the point where it jolts me, and this is all the way up to midnight, sometimes after. I love the food, they're a great place, but I've talked to them twice about the noise with the motorcycles, and I know they can hear it inside because it is loud. There's also a lot of people that hang out in the parking lot behind CVS, where sometimes they park, and I can hear the chatter and the voices late at night. It does not give you the vibe of a family neighborhood when you get these loud noises. So my kids do wake up from time to time, and if anybody has got young kids, or remember, it's not always the easiest to get them to go back down. So anyway, that's all I have to say.
Good.
Before
Thank
you
you.
go, sir, if I may,
Go ahead.
Mr.
Yeah.
Chair, is it one specific night more than the other, or is it every Friday or Saturday, or is it one noisier on one of those nights more than the other?
I was thinking about why I haven't come before to say something about this, and I think it's really because I've normalized the noise. It's become an almost every night thing. It's just the crowd, and I don't scorn that crowd. Lord knows that I've been at bars that love to have a good time. I just don't think that Honto is in the proper location to allow these types of things. I think it's just a sacrifice for such a great location for them being so close to residential. But yes, it is a regular. It wouldn't be one specific weekend. It's
Okay.
every weekend during the
weekend.
motorcycle months.
Yeah.
So.
Oh.
Good.
Before you leave, so these motorcycles, are they unusually loud? I mean, is that there, like some motorcycles are almost normal, but others
Yeah.
are very loud. Are these the kind that are very loud?
In fact, some occasions there are motorcycles with straight pipes, which is literally zero exhaust, and
Yeah.
it literally, you can feel it in your chest almost when they rev it up. It's very startling because, it's
Well, I've always
Jolting.
wondered if those are really legal in general. Not just,
to me, it seems ridiculous because I can hear them literally almost for 3 minutes, 4 minutes while
Yeah.
they leave. They could be on the other side of town. I can still
Right.
hear it. And that's starting up with usually the motorcycles, the exhaust is facing my house, so I get the loud pops of it.
Yeah.
And I used to ride a motorcycle. I don't hate motorcycles. I just, again, we're so close that it's just an issue for me.
Okay. All right, thanks.
Good, thank you. And Chief, if you could come up and kind of fill in some of the blanks here. I know you've done some investigation or some digging into the situation. I believe there were 3 individual complaints that evening.
Yes, there were. Actually, my first selectmen's meeting here, when I was your interim chief, I remember Mr. Drake being here talking about this. And I can remember one of the owners of, or if not both owners of Honto were here. And I remember them talking about a rear door being open and the noise. So this is the second time I've been at a meeting hearing this. We did, in fact, Lieutenant Bowden and myself did, in fact, look at all of our records. We pulled all of our recordings. And in fact, we did have 3 calls this past weekend from the neighbors. 2 of the calls came very close together, and the third one was from Mr. Drake a little later. Officers responded to the first call, and they actually responded in our unmarked traffic car, so they were very low profile when they responded.
Do you happen to have the times of those calls?
Yeah, I have the report with me. I can give you the exact times. The first calls were at 21:15 hours, and the 2 calls came in at the same time, so they both came in at that particular time. Officer Rujo responded to that call. He was at that call within 10 minutes. When he arrived there, he said that the music that he heard at that particular time was contained within the building. He could hear it, but it was contained within the building. He wanted to check that back door, because we've had issues if the back door is open, the music can escape through the back door. And at that particular time, the back door was shut. So that would have been a concern. And then we received another call, actually from Mr. Drake at 23:59. And that call actually concerned me because it was about 10 minutes after. I believe there was an agreement that the music was going to stop at 11:30. And this
So-
one was about 10 minutes past that.
Right, so just to confirm, so you have 21:15 was the first, so that's 9:15.
Right.
Just for us civilians, 9:15, and then
Yes.
11:40?
And then 11:40 was
Okay.
the other call. And our understanding was at 11:30, the music is supposed to stop.
Their license is 8:30 to 11:30,
Right.
right?
So the patrol supervisor, Sergeant Ellis, actually responded to that call and spoke with them there and said, hey, it's, number one, it's you're past your time, and it was noisy. So I have some suggestions that I'd like to give to the board because I sympathize with the neighbors for
Okay.
that area.
So before you do, I'd just like to kind of separate what I think are 2 issues here. Number 1 is the music,
Yes,
and number 2, it's the outside environments.
the parking
As well,
lot.
The parking lot,
Yes.
yes.
Yeah.
So I would appreciate if you addressed both of those.
Okay. I'll address the music first, because I think the music is probably easier to control. What I would recommend is, I would like to go speak directly to the management at Honto and express our concerns to them. I would also like to hear if they have any ideas or suggestions on their own of ways that they can abate noise, such as interior muffling in the building, them hiring a sound engineer, them having acoustics inside the building. And I also want to address that 10-minute lag time from when the music was still playing, when it should have stopped at 11:30. That concerns me, so I would like to address that with them as well. I think as business owners abutting a residential area, they have, obviously, they have a right to run a business, but they also have an inherent right to be responsible to the neighbors who live there. And it's reached a tipping point once again, because you have neighbors here and the neighbors are concerned. So
Yeah.
I'd like to speak to them about that and address that.
What are your thoughts if we were to modify their license and roll back their end time?
Oh, I would support that.
You
I
would
have-
support
Yeah,
that,
I would have
okay.
no issue with that. I still would like to speak to the management
No,
there. because-
you're the enforcement agency, so I think
Right.
that would be the appropriate, action. But,
Mhm.
I think we have a responsibility to respond as well, and that's just one option that we may choose to discuss.
Absolutely.
Can I ask the chief a question? Are you familiar with the acoustic measures that have been taken to date there? Like-
No, I'm not. That
So
all
last
occurred
year,
before
or
my
maybe
time.
the year before, we had a long discussion with them, and they were putting up acoustic material and supposed to be closing the door and things like that. So I think when you go to talk to him, you'll see, or Ray will tell you about what he's done so far. So you can look at that and see if you think it's effective or not.
Right.
We actually, I'm also trying to remember, we did that whole nuisance noise bylaw, and so I'm trying to remember the details, but do you and your officers have a good idea of your enforcement, structure when you go down there in terms of this bylaw?
Well,
that
there's the bylaw, but we also have the enforcement end as far as disturbing the peace, which we tend to use that. That has a stronger enforcement from our end. So we tend to look at it enforcement-wise from that
So you mean like a
standpoint.
discretionary decision about keeping the peace as opposed to? Is that what-
There's two methods of enforcement. There are the bylaws,
Yeah.
which we certainly can employ. But we also have, if somebody willfully disturbs the peace of the neighborhood
I see.
after they've been advised, then we can take stronger
Oh,
law
I see.
enforcement
Yeah.
action
Yeah.
from that,
Yeah,
from
never heard-
that
okay.
standpoint.
So I don't want to, I want to keep this focused on the complaint that we have, on
Yeah.
the specific complaint. But I do think, as an aside, we need to go back and review our nuisance bylaw. I think we did a disservice to the town by adopting what we did, which is a reasonable person's standard,
Right.
as opposed to specific criteria. And I think in this case here, I think it would be fair to say that if a resident can hear, and Mr. Drake doesn't live immediately next to the restaurant.
Right.
He lives around the corner and up the street. If he can hear from there, then there's a decibel level issue that is way beyond just soundproofing the building.
Right.
Right? So I think we need to, at some point, go back and review that. That's a separate thing, but, so that's what I would suggest is that you proceed to have a discussion with the owner and report back at our next meeting, which is October the 2nd.
Okay.
And then I would also certainly ask you to include the potential for rolling back their entertainment license hours.
And certainly, every amplifier has a volume switch, so the
Right.
responsibility is on the club owners. They need to police themselves. And if they don't police themselves, that's
Right.
where, as public officials, we step in to take care of the rights of the homeowners.
To roll back, we have to have a hearing, right? Public
Well, we
hearing?
would, at that,
Okay.
yeah, we'd do it the proper way, but I mean, it's certainly within our purview
No,
to
I
either
understand.
suspend the license, rescind it, or to modify it, so.
I guess I'm just asking that from a perspective of, we have to do a 30-day notice to do a hearing, so do we want to wait until we hear back from the chief at our next meeting? Or do we want to put out a notice already for a hearing for the second meeting in October?
You know, if this was the first time that we're hearing about this,
Yeah,
this scenario, I would suggest that to wait. But this isn't the first time.
yeah.
And, you know, Ray has been standing right where the chief is, and he's heard it from us already.
Yeah.
Not once, but several times. And it's just, you know, it's thumbing their nose to the authorities in the community that have offered and have provided him the right to have entertainment there. Oh, we'll do everything we can, you know, all these idle promises and nothing's being followed up on. And that's what really tans me big time with respect to this.
Yeah,
I
I
have a
agree,
problem
Joe.
with that.
So I would ask you to, you know, be prepared to come back on the second, and at least have a discussion. And then in the interim, we can, you know, I would ask each of us to, you know, ponder this, you know, how we think we should be responding to this. But now, an equally large issue, of course, is the outside environment.
Yes,
And,
and,
you know, how would you propose to manage that? Now, it would seem that you could require him to have police details.
right, we could,
Require, or we could have, you know, we can have a regular presence there on particular nights when we know there's more activity than others.
right, my first inkling would be to require him to have a police detail. I'll tell you why. To require officers to be there at a specific time at a private organization every night, that's depriving the rest of the town of that police service. Plus, the officers could be tied up. They could be at a motor vehicle accident, they could be at an alarm response, so they would be unable to basically babysit their parking lot. I really don't feel that that's in the best interest of the townspeople, for the town to have to worry about that. As far as enforcement, absolutely. There are state motor vehicle regulations for loud motorcycle and loud car mufflers. It's called making a harsh and objectionable noise. The officers can write tickets for that. And certainly if they're there on a regular patrol or a directed patrol or a routine patrol, if they observe that, they certainly can issue citations for that. But I go back, I put the responsibility right on the business owner. I'm very pro-business in town. We have amazing businesses in town, but the businesses must make the effort to get along with their surrounding neighbors. And I would say that if there is to be a regular police presence there, then it would be up to the business owner to pay for that.
I don't argue that at all. That was brought up 2 years ago by me. And he made it, you know, well, I'm just making ends meet now type of deal, you know, conversation about the fact that, you know, he's new, he's trying to do this and that, he'll do everything that he can. And I have to agree with you. I think a police detail would help eliminate some of that excess noise that you folks have to deal with, especially with the motorcycles. And I'll have to defend Ray a little bit on this. Ray's responsibility is within the walls of that building himself. He's not really responsible for what goes on outside that in the parking lot, because the landowner is responsible for that as well. So we may need to talk about who the landowner is and have him be vigilant on that and do what he needs to do to discuss with you what steps he can make to keep that from happening.
One thing, Joe, if I can, but, you know, Ray or whoever's, they can talk to the patrons about these issues too, on their way out. I mean, right? I mean, you've been to concerts where the band talks to the audience about issues and tries to get them to, you know, so, I mean, that's just another suggestion, and people should be made aware of the effect of their late night. You know, if they're hanging out in the parking lot talking loudly or whatever, they may not realize that, you know, it's disturbing people at midnight, you know, so.
Well, I think unfortunately, my assumption is that the owner and the management are either unable or unwilling to really truly manage what they've
The crowd.
what they've created there. My understanding is they've done some internal modifications to the space, and it's made it even more of a lounge environment than a restaurant environment.
Right.
So it's, I think there's a lot of dynamics going on there, and, you know, hopefully we can start to, we've got to change it. And, you know, our ability to change it is through our licensing ability, right? You can change it by enforcement opportunities. So I would say, let's come back on the 2nd and let's discuss this some more, and if we need to do a public hearing, and we'll set it up.
Excellent. Part of our peek into this, so to speak, would be to also meet with the neighbors,
Yes.
and speak with all the neighbors, so
Yeah.
that, I've spoken with a number of them already, so
Yeah.
I know their concerns, and I've been down and looked at the area extensively. I think there's a lot that can be done on both sides
Yeah.
to actually end up with
Yeah.
a solution to the issue.
And I think we're no different than you are, Chief. We're pro-business as well. We're
Right.
supportive of businesses. We want his business to be, and we've had these conversations numerous times about supporting his business and being successful. I think all of us have been patrons there over the time he's been open. We just attended a fundraiser recently.
Yeah.
There was music. You could not hear it outside. It was done in a proper level, and so it is possible to have, entertainment in a location and not be disturbing the neighbors.
Right, everyone's home is their sanctuary, and,
Right.
I feel people have a right to have peace and respect in their homes, so, especially when you start getting into late-night hours. So
Okay,
we'll do whatever we
All right.
can to support that.
okay. Anything else from the
Chief,
board
no,
at this
sounds
point?
good.
No. From the neighbors, anything? Are you,
What you guys have said?
are you okay with the, at least the path we're taking right now?
Yes, I
Okay,
I think the rest of the neighbors, the same way,
okay.
feel the same way. You guys have started to take a path,
Yeah.
and we'll see what we can get.
Okay, fair enough, so,
You're welcome. I'm sorry that you guys have to, live in that type of an environment. I wouldn't be happy living there, that's for sure.
So we appreciate you guys, taking the time to listen to us.
Yep.
yeah,
You know,
okay.
And across the chief,
Well, we're here for you, so.
All right.
Thank you.
Very good. Thank you.
Thank
Thank you,
you.
Chief.
Thanks.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Any other citizen participation this evening? Mr. DeSoni?
Watch your time, 'cause we have a hearing
Yeah.
at 7:10.
It's not
It's not
advertised.
No, it's not
no,
advertised.
no. You're on, Mark.
Okay, thank you. Good evening.
Good evening.
I was just going to have one quick question through the chairman to Assistant Town Manager. What I brought in, did it get passed around?
Yes, I did let Beth know.
That's all.
Thank you, Mark. Can you come up to the microphone, please, if you have a question or a statement, please?
Is this the only opportunity to say something
Yes.
publicly? So later on, if you're at a lower agenda point, you won't have the opportunity?
It depends on the item that we're speaking to, but I would ask that if you have something to say specific to an item, do it now, please.
Okay, Mom. I'll let her speak. Margie Gassell, 8 Adams Road. I'm here tonight because our neighborhood is concerned that if the financing of the Zero Tri-Street property purchase is done by debt exclusion, that it won't get approved. It could pit different projects and purchases against each other, even if they're not on the same ballot. And I believe it's very important that this purchase go through for a number of reasons that I'll summarize. First, there's not a lot of green space on that side of Ashland, and I don't know whether we would consider the Cadillac paint property green space, but even if you do, it's not safely accessible from people living on the other side of Elliott. And green space and natural wooded areas are important parts of communities on a social, from a social standpoint and ecological. And as you know, I'm working on the climate change issue, and water quality and flooding impacts of urban stormwater can be addressed by protecting open spaces and natural areas within and adjacent to urban development. And so preserving these areas is becoming even more important to address wet weather impacts that are likely to increase with climate change. Also, preserving this land would provide opportunities for passive recreational opportunities for town residents. And there is the potential to get deed restrictions on adjacent properties so that more land could be preserved at the same cost. And then last and certainly not least, the developer is looking at a 40B project with 50 or more units. And this would put a tremendous strain on town resources, and it would have, I would say, treacherous traffic impacts at the intersection of Adams Road and Elliott and on Elliott Street. And so for these reasons, we urge you to find other means of financing the purchase than as a debt exclusion.
Okay, great.
you.
Thank you, Margie. Thank you. All right, next on the agenda is a presentation by the, or an update on the Mindess School Building Project, and Mr. Paul Kendall from the School Committee and from the Mindess Committee will provide that presentation.
Good evening.
Evening, Paul.
Thanks for giving me the opportunity to give you an update on the project. For, as you said, for those who don't know me, my name is Paul Kendall. I'm a member of the school committee and also the chair of the school building committee. I serve on that with Ms. Reeves, who's our vice chair of the committee as well. So let me bring up the presentation here. All right. So I have an almost infinite amount of information I could share. I've tried to boil it down so I can go as deep as into different parts as you'd like. So I'll try to keep it at a high level. So I'm going to talk to you a little bit about the project. I want to definitely, first of all, hope all of you received the invitation for this coming Monday, our first public forum on the project. It'll be a 2-hour session with much more deep dive into the process and the project, where we are, some timelines and upcoming activities. So I invite you and all the residents to be able to participate. That will be recorded and I believe on Facebook Live from WACA as well, for those who can't participate. So we started the Mindess building project. So what is it? Let's see. Let's get to that in a minute. So as you know, the building was built in 1954. It served us as a high school, middle school, and an elementary school, and flip-flopped a couple times in between there. While it served us well, the building condition is pretty rough. We have a lot of issues, whether that be the thermal envelope, water infiltration, as well as numerous ADA and code compliance issues. That, along with our enrollment increases, obviously we have a lot of space constraints, and even the spaces we do have aren't really a fit for education in the 21st century, right? So our educators are doing a wonderful job despite the building, and essentially this project is hoping to flip that so the building can support our educational objectives. And so what I'll do is I'll go through, describe the process in a bit, but essentially what this project is doing is partnering with the MSBA, the Massachusetts School Building Authority, that partners with communities and provides grant opportunities for capital improvements to school facilities. And so I'll get to some of that in more detail in a bit. So the makeup of the committee, we are very fortunate. We have just a fantastic committee. We have both of our principals. This is probably very unusual. Both of our principals, while being passionate educators, they're also Ashland residents. Most of our community members on the committee are also building professionals, whether in the design space, project management. We even have people in the utilities. So we just have a phenomenal group, and they've done a lot of great work. So I want to thank them for their efforts. So this is I tried to make this high level, but this is some of the things that have been going on. So the project started 2 years ago. with a statement of interest we submitted in the spring of 2017. We submitted that statement of interest for 3 schools, Pitaway, Warren, and Mindess. And the reason we did that is we wanted to be able to explore grade configurations. And so we were accepted into the eligibility phase with the MSBA for Mindess. But because we submitted those SOIs for all the schools, we're able to look at potentially bringing the 2nd grade over into an elementary school and creating a 2 through 5 with the potential of then taking the preschool from Pitaway over to Warren. The MSBA does support taking older facilities offline, so that they do support that. So we submitted in spring of 2017, and we were accepted into the eligibility phase in December of 2017. With the eligibility, that has 8 requirements. It's a 270-day period where we have 8 requirements. The primary ones being the formation of the building committee, an enrollment certification, and a town vote for funding support for the feasibility study. And as you can see, those occurred in May. This board formed the building committee in May of 2018. In same May, we had a debt exclusion for $1 million for the feasibility study, and then we were invited into the feasibility phase in October of that year. We kind of accelerated this, so the 270 days got us into January of 2019, but we submitted early so we could get in early because we knew what our base reimbursement rate would be. Every calendar year it's going to reset, so it could have gone down, so we wanted to get in there, and so we were able to get in there. So the feasibility period. So the MSBA process is a little bit complicated and even a little bit inconsistent in their terminology. So we are in the feasibility study phase. The process of the MSBA is broken into modules, which in their module terms includes feasibility and schematic design. So the feasibility study period will bring us through evaluation of current existing conditions, formulation of educational plan, visioning plan, all the way through a schematic design for a preferred solution. So feasibility began in October. We had the OPM subcommittee formed in November. So during the feasibility, there's a section called Forming the Project Team, where the building committee hires a project manager and also a design firm. So we formed the OPM subcommittee in November. That committee met 6 times. They created the RFS, or the request for services, for the OPM. We had 11 responses. The subcommittee then shortlisted the OPMs and interviewed those shortlisted ones and selected a finalist to present to the building committee for approval. I can't express how much work that was for that subcommittee. We had 11 respondents. The packages that they have to submit are 50, 60 pages on average, can be more, and they had to be evaluated on 13 individual criteria and weighted. So it was a lot of effort on behalf of that committee, so I really appreciate their efforts. So we hired the OPM, awarded the contract to Compass Project Management in April of this year. Once we did that, the next thing on the agenda was to get a designer on board. So we submitted a designer RFS in May. The process for the designer is a little bit different. For the OPM, Ashland was in complete control of who we hired. For the designer, we are not. We did not get to choose our designer. We are invited to a designer selection panel with the MSBA.
It's a 16-member panel. We had 3 seats. The seats are the CEO, a town manager or designee, superintendent or designee, and a member of the school committee. So this, Mr. Herbert, Mr. Adams, and I filled those seats on the designer selection panel. So the designer selection panel was responsible for shortlisting the respondents for the designers. We had 7 firms submit. We had 2 meetings with the designer selection panel, the first to shortlist, second conducting interviews on the top 3, and we selected, the designer panel selected Flansburgh Architects, and we awarded that contract in August. It's been a whirlwind, so I'm trying to keep the dates straight. So that brings us essentially to today. Any questions? That's even a high level of all the different things that have happened over the last 2 years. There's been a lot of work by the committee. So any questions on how we got to where we are?
No, but I guess we're good now.
All right, so we have 2 slides that Compass put together for our forum on Monday that I'll share with you. This first one is a very high-level project plan that says, okay, here are some of the dates that are going to be out there. The asterisks, the green asterisks there, are public forums that we're going to have. We're going to have our first one is obviously Monday. That one, again, is project overview, timeline, process, all those different things. The public will get a chance to meet the project team. A lot of the sub-consultants will be there as well.
Paul, would you just reiterate the time, the date, and the location for
It
the
is
forum?
Monday, September 23rd, from 6 to 8 in the Mindess cafeteria. The second one will be, I believe our current date, which the details will come out, is October 29th. The spot will be determined a little bit later, because that will be a more of a public workshop focused on the educational visioning. So there's a lot of, once we've hired the design firm, that started a chain reaction of a lot of work going on. There's many work streams going on. There might have been a lot of people who have seen, I've already been contacted by people who have seen the borings going on over at the middle school. So the 2 sites that are currently just being evaluated are the current Mindess site, and also the middle school site to potentially have a campus solution over there. So once we hired the designer, there was a lot of work going on. There's the borings and the site evaluations. One of the big things for us is the formulation of an educational plan. That ed plan, as they call it, is really the narrative that drives the project. There's 2 real things that are so crucial to the MSBA process. That's our educational plan and also their space templating plan. The marriage of those 2 things is really what defines what spaces will be eligible for reimbursement in whatever solution that comes up. And just to reiterate, nothing's been decided. We are just in the beginning stages of evaluating things. The MSBA will make us look at what it would be just to bring the building up to code, what it would be for a renovation, what it would be for an addition, and then potentially new construction. So there's a lot of different things we have to evaluate to see what was going to meet our needs. And we have not decided anything. We have met with Michael multiple times, and trying to figure out what potential sites to look at, and those were the 2 that we're going to have on the table for looking at that. The other variables are obviously the grade configuration that I already mentioned as well. So we have a lot ahead of us. The building committee, one of the primary functions of the building committee is to go through this process and help shortlist all those options. There's going to be a lot. And then we have to get it down to a manageable amount so that the select board, school committee, and the town can have something to weigh in on and voice their opinion on. So where did that bring us here? So the educational plan, so that's one of the big things that it's going on right now. So our second one in October is going to be on the educational visioning. That will be more of a workshop setting that we'll break into working groups. And the reason why that's happening then, right now, there's a educational visioning team led by New Vista and the people there with a superintendent and our educators here. There will be, they have to amass a certain amount of information and things, and then we're going to present that to the community in October. There's also going to be another one in December at some point. We have not set a date. That will be on more the design, concept, sustainability, security. Those forums will continue to evolve with the different portions of it. But there's going to be many ways that people can get involved, and we look forward to that. So as you look at this overall time frame, you'll see a bunch of different things. This is really just a milestone chart. So there's a submission of what's called a preliminary design plan, and then you'll see a preferred schematic report and also a schematic design report. So those three things that are kind of right in the middle of the screen there are the three big submissions. And I will go over what those are in more detail. There's a subsequent slide to that. But this is a timeline that brings us through to the start of construction. And these times are all estimates based on when we hit certain milestones with the MSBA. For example, there's a submission we have for February 21. If we miss it by 2 months. It pushes things out because they have their meetings dates and things like that. So any questions on this high-level timeline?
Paul, I just have one question, and I'm going to ask you to go back a second.
Sure.
You said that the committee put the request in earlier because you were trying to secure the specific funding.
Well, so we knew what the reimbursement rate was in 2018, and it was a good rate. So our base rate right now is 52.26%.
Okay.
And I always want to throw out a number. I want to qualify it, right? So that is the base rate, and our base rate could go up depending on different parts of the project. But our effective rate, which the ratio of our total cost to what we're going to be reimbursed, will not be that. And that's due to lots of different things, including caps on square footage costs and things like that. It'll most likely be in the 40s somewhere, but again, I don't want anybody holding me that. That'll be something that comes with the schematic report. We'll know better what our effective reimbursement rate will be then, but our base rate is 52.26, and we wanted to lock it in, so that's why we.
If the rate was to be higher the following year, would you be able to try to obtain that, or is that something that you're going to be locked in and that's it?
There wasn't much opportunity for it to go up much. But
Okay.
It could have gone down a lot,
Yeah.
and I believe it didn't. It wouldn't have been
Fluctuated that way.
advantageous for us to wait. I
Okay.
believe is how it landed out. I don't recall what had happened after the new year, but with the MSB, I thought it was also a good idea that we lock in at the time.
Thank you.
So this is the high-level timeline. The next one's a little bit more of a detail on the different milestones we must hit, where we need to shortlist the options. So that's something that the committee needs to do is hit these dates so we can submit the PDP. We need to select a preferred option. So some of these things are also going to tie to points in time where we'll have the project team in front of the select board. We'll have to have decisions by the school committee and select board at different times. For instance, the educational plan, which is needed for the PDP, needs to be approved by the school committee. And so that needs to be done at that time. We'll also be looking at different times to have some of these things ratified by this board, potentially even having a tri-board meeting to discuss because some of these dates, it's gonna be tough. We are trying to get the process moving as fast as we can to, to have that flexibility down the line. We don't want this to drag out. Because just how things lie, we miss it by a few months, we might be kicked out to the next school year before we may have an empty building that's completed, but we can't use it until the next school year. So we're really trying to make sure we're pushed down. Yeah, so we'll be reaching out to the select board with those dates. We actually had a meeting with Compass and Flansburgh today talking about, in February, what do we need in February, and looking at dates for potentially having a tri-board meeting or coming before you in February. So just to give you a heads up, we will be contacting you about that. So what makes up those reports and those submissions? So this is a high-level slide that Compass is going to be presenting on Monday. So the preliminary design program, a PDP submission, that's where the educational plan has to be, in a final draft state where we can submit it to the MSBA for their feedback. An initial space summary, the evaluation of existing conditions and site developments. So this is where we need to have gone through and know what the existing conditions are. We have to have narrowed down, so say we had 11 or 12 options we're looking at, the code, there might be a lot of variables, so we might have 15 or more options that we need to, run through. We will need to have brought that down to a manageable number, maybe 4 or 5 or somewhere in that ballpark. So that's what that preliminary design plan is involved. We need to narrow that down. So it's a consumable, now we're having real discussions. That preferred schematic, we've vetted those things, and now we've gone through that and we've actually selected what we would like to do. Hey, we want this renovation to the building. We want a new building on this site. And this is, it's dry fitting that, so it's a test fit to say, okay, they have the plans, they've kind of said, okay, we need at this point you'll know what the square footage you need for the educational plan warrants. They'll take and they'll fit that on the site. Okay, will this work on the site? And that's what they'll do. And then once we get to the schematic design report, that's where we'll have a schematic design. It's basically a 30% design. So enough for pricing, enough for us to go and get both town support and MSBA approval for, we'll know a dollar amount at that point. And at that point, we'll also know or have a good estimate of what our effective reimbursement rate will be. Again, it won't be 52.26%, but it will be probably in the 40s is best to guess at this point, but that is just a guess. So that's high level. I can give you more information on any of the things we've done in the past. Again, I can't thank the committee enough. We've done a lot of work, and that includes Superintendent Adams has put in a lot of time on this, and so I appreciate everybody's time.
A very impressive committee. I've known many of the members, and certainly thank you for all your work, and Yolanda for representing the board as well. So Monday,
6 to 8.
6 to 8, Mindess Cafeteria, and that's going to be the first of numerous forums to present this project to the community.
All of those greens are the planned ones that we will have at some point, and we know that there will be that one, and then one in October 29th, and then one in December. That date has yet to be set. So.
Okay.
The October one is the Educational Vision Workshop, so that's a great one for people to come in and have input on what the educational visioning is going to be. This provides us an opportunity to relook at, okay, now we will have a facility, whether it be a renovated facility or a new facility that would actually support the 21st century in education, so that'd be pretty exciting.
Same
Very good.
locations, Paul? Mindess, cafeteria,
No,
16, okay.
so the workshop is gonna require a different space, so, that might be in the high school library, or, we're not sure. We'll
Okay.
definitely send out the details on that. We're still working out the logistics of what makes the most sense, but it will most likely be someplace like the high school library or cafeteria or something like that, where we can have those breakouts.
I just had a
Go
question.
right ahead.
Yeah, so Paul, if, in terms of how would you kind of summarize the problem statement here? Like, so, you know, what are the latest projections? Is this a need to replace a building that's old and failing? That's one of the reasons, but is it also a need for expansion or redesign? Like, how would you kind of?
It is all those things, yes. And so that'll be something that's gone over, and we'll have sub-consultants who are, third-party evaluating all those conditions. So to your point, our enrollment, we're over design capacity for the building right now.
Mhm.
So it was not designed for the number of students we have in there. We have to be very creative with the ways we're doing things. We've done a lot of good things both for our students and for fiscal responsibility in developing a lot of programming to keep our students that have high needs in district. But those require space, and we've been very creative. But we are, regardless of this project and the work with the MSBA, we would need to address the space needs.
So where does that kind of design fit into this process? Is it part of the educational program?
So this feasibility phase is going to basically, out of this, we are going to know what we need. We're going to know what will be reimbursed and what the MSBA's responsibility.
And is there certain age groups or cohorts that this is focused on? Certain grades? I mean, we're talking about the Mindess school.
Right, so we're talking about Mindess. I can tell you, my personal feeling is the grade configuration I think is the best for both the kids from an experience perspective and also from the town's perspective is creating a 2 through 5 environment.
So that's the focus of this project, most likely. I mean,
Yeah, so
affect
we've
others.
gotten the okay and an approval from the MSBA to look at both grade configurations, keeping it as is, a 3 through
Okay,
5,
so that's,
and also doing a 2 through 5. But again, there's lots of good things from the student's perspective for having the 2 through 5 building, and from the town. If we think about the different projects that are going on, if we have a 2 through 5 elementary building, we're looking at actually 3 downtown parcels potentially turned over to the town for use, right, with the public safety project as well. So that's pretty exciting. And this is, again, nothing's been even started in evaluation other than the site evaluations, but if it's if it ends up being a 2 through 5 campus solution over at the middle school, right across from a new Y, and that'd be amazing, then we're talking another parcel that's turned over for the town use. So that would be very exciting.
So much of this process, if not all of it, is prescribed by the
Very
MSBA,
prescribed, yes.
right?
Correct.
So in terms of the evaluation of alternatives, like, you listed the various potential alternatives, who decides that? I mean, is it, does the town come up with their preferred alternative and make their case to the MSBA?
Yeah, so if I'm being honest, in my opinion, this one's a relatively easy decision, because I think what will come out of those, there's a lot of good reasons why the MSBA requires you to do this, right? They don't want to just, build new buildings all over the place, right? But we all know that the issues with Mindess will go well beyond just, hey, we need a little bit more space. We have so many ADA, just getting up to ADA compliance would probably be, that's part of the feasibility study will tell us all that. They will give us
the
costs
feasibility, yeah.
for those things. And, we'll know at that point whether that's even feasible. So, but eventually it is the MSBA that will approve our preferred after we designate what that is. But all this work everything has to be justified. We will have to go through these, we have to document all those things and why they're not feasible or practical. That's part of this process, and as you can see, the process goes through the next what do we have in fall 2020. So that's over a year away.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of work to be done before then, and there'll be a lot of documentation of those different options.
Just ask
Sure.
quick. Paul, I have a question with respect to, I know that some of the neighboring towns, in some of their past projects, have built some beautiful, school buildings, but yet they were too small.
Which town you talking about? Hopkinton,
I
maybe?
wouldn't, I won't mention any names because I don't want to embarrass anybody. I guess when you folks do the feasibility study, you talk about, the build-out of Ashland in and of itself. Do you anticipate those figures coming into play with respect to that?
So as you know, Superintendent Adams has a fairly good handle on enrollment projections. With Chapter 70, works closely with Michael and Brittany on those things. And I can tell you, so even the enrollment certification, we had a number that we wanted, and we gave that to the MSBA. The enrollment certification, I believe, was 5 students off. So we were on the same page. So we're confident that it'll meet the needs for the next 10, 15 years. But also part of this is they require our plan and the preferred plan that we decide on, the approved plan, to have the ability to expand.
Okay.
So we will not be a postage stamp somewhere that will be readdressing this with a new building or something in 10 or 15 years. No,
Okay.
they require us to understand and I think document what an expansion of the new building would look like. So even if we're talking about the middle school, it will be not an option if we can just barely fit what we need now on there and we couldn't expand.
Yeah.
And the expansion could be up, but
Right.
we would need to have that plan in place for them to approve it.
But if you knew that was a possibility down the road, the structure that would be built in a manner so that way it could support a second or third floor.
Yeah,
To
yeah,
that
yeah,
degree.
and even if it wasn't necessarily built that way, the structure to do that, I don't think is
Okay.
is only fractional of what the expansion would be anyway.
See, that's amazing to me. I mean, seeing that, you're looking to expand, with potential growth, and you have an idea what it could be, and you're often maybe by 4 or 5 students, but you never know what could come down the road, and why you don't build for that potential growth, and have the space available, like we talk about with our public safety building.
Right.
We wanna make sure that we have the availability in room now, because we know at some point in time, we're gonna need that down the road growth-wise.
Right.
But they won't allow you to do that, I take it.
Well, so it's interesting, we can think we know that, but I can tell you that there's lots of towns that have the complete opposite problem, that their enrollments have gone down and they have empty spaces. And so from the MSBA's perspective, that's not good. It's not good from the point of view of efficiency. It's not good from, part of the reason why they have some of the caps. So the current cap on price per square foot of construction costs is, I believe, $333 a square foot. That's low. We'll be above that most likely. But part of the reason they do that is so that their dollars can help more towns. And so they won't let you do that. But if we have this project and then 10 years from now, things change, we would be eligible to go back to them for entering into a renovation project for.
I guess my common sense thought with that would be is that in 10 years, the price has escalated to, the construction prices have gone up 10 years worth. And we know that within 1 year, it went up $7 million. So, if you're looking at that,
Yeah.
it would be easier to build it now, a little bit more
Yeah,
Yeah.
so there's lots of interesting
Less conflict.
conversations we're gonna have, right? So, one of the things that keeps on coming up, it was part of every submission, by the designers, is our auditorium over there. Now, I can disagree all I want with MSBA, but auditoriums for elementary schools are not reimbursable. Cafetoriums are, so they'll give you an additional, I think it's 1,000 square foot on a cafeteria for a stage, and make a kind of but it's not the same as an auditorium. And Mindess Auditorium is well used. You know, so that's potentially a conversation we need to have as a community down the line.
That's how they built the old high school cafeteria, for that purpose, for that reason. It was built that way because they wouldn't support it.
Now now they will reimburse for middle school and high school, but they won't for elementary school.
Wow.
I completely disagree. I think,
disagree
you know, Mindess is a perfect example of how well used that is and how an integral part of it, you know, it is for us, so. But that's a thing we need to discuss as a community, you know, do we value that? And that could mean lots of different things. That could mean, hey, if we are a new building, either on that site or somewhere else, do we preserve that part of that building? Do we do something? Can we, you know, do we value it enough to take it on our own to have an auditorium? Because one of the things that'll be very crucial during this process, we've stressed throughout, is that our biggest meeting spaces in town are our schools, right? So we're very much looking to make sure that we design spaces that can be used for community events, whether it's indoors farmers market, right? Maybe, you know, imagine having a better space for that, right? That'd be awesome. And so there's a lot of that. And so we're going to be definitely looking at, you know, how this impacts the community, because, you know, outside of the school hours, that's where we meet, right? Aside from the community center and small meeting rooms like this, that's where all organizations meet, and it's important, so.
Mr. Chair, can I ask one?
Yeah, we'd like to move
Sure.
on, but so one more.
Yep. So, you know, we're all, or most of us are pretty aware of climate change, and you're building, potentially, it sounds like a new building, or at least extensive renovations. What's the thinking on having a net zero building?
That was part of our RFS.
Your what?
The request for services, design
I see.
services,
Oh,
that was
very
part
good.
of that. So, we're obviously a green community.
Right.
My wife was once the chair of the sustainability committee.
Seem to remember that, yes.
And, you know, so that'll be a key part of it.
And, you know, we got an invitation, I think, to the design, and I'm not sure how relevant that is to the building construction when you get to that phase. But I'm just wondering, in terms of, you brought up the sustainability committee, are they on your list of invitees, or how do you get input from the community about how green this building should be? And is it, you know, review of the costs and, you know, feasibility and that kind of thing? How is this?
Absolutely. We'll be reaching out to them. That's a little further down the line when we actually have something to talk about.
Yeah,
Like,
okay.
hey, we're gonna go on this site, it's gonna do this. Like I said, when we hired the designer's submissions all had all their sub-consultants. The majority of them used the green engineer and Chris Schaffner. They're very good. They're probably the best in Massachusetts. My wife talks highly about him even before the
Great,
project.
'cause this is an opportunity to really design something new that'll really.
Absolutely. So
yeah.
whatever we do here, even if it's an incremental cost to go more energy efficient, whether it's net zero or whether it's a low EUI, or, you know, so in the RFS, we wanted to explore net zero ready, and a low EUI of potentially, you know, under 30, I think was the number we put on there. But we didn't want to put a number. And like I said, we even, one of our members is with Eversource. And so we have, that'll be one of our goals. And so
Okay, very good.
that's part of taking something like Pitaway offline, is that
Yeah,
this building should end up, if it costs us a little bit more to build it energy efficient, in the long run, it'll be a cost savings, so.
very good.
Good, well, thank you for the presentation, and I know personally you're doing a lot of work on this, so thank you for all your efforts, and we'll look forward to a lot of conversation.
Great, hope to see you on Monday.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks.
All right, next on our agenda is our priority project updates, and Jen is going to put a few slides up for us, and we'll start with the Rail Transit District. So one of the things I thought we would do relative to this update is an opportunity to kind of any recap or any commentary on the presentation from our last meeting, number one. And also, I think it might be good if we kind of confirmed or reaffirmed our position as a board. We came to a consensus at our retreat back in, I think it was it August or whenever, but a consensus on or just to reaffirm that, and also to review some additional information that's come before us relative to the project design, I guess, or footprint.
There it is, I guess.
So, okay, so what we have here is and probably not that
And now it's
visible
not
from the
great.
audience all that well.
Does anybody have a pointer? Maybe that.
Well, I think, do we have a pointer, Jen? But,
Didn't know, Michael has his.
so, but
Oops, sorry.
So basically, this rendering, this footprint is different than the footprint that we
Right.
Was
looked
presented.
at our last
Right.
meeting. Now,
Correct.
this footprint was given to the Affordable Housing Trust at your meeting last week.
Correct.
And I think this is important for us to discuss because it shows the roadway in a different
Mhm.
configuration. It shows the roadway closer to the Cirrus side. And my understanding is that the grade between this configuration and the prior one is either the same or similar.
What is the date of that map?
I believe this is January.
Okay.
Yes, so this is
So,
one of the iterations.
So from my perspective, having that road in that position does a couple things.
Yeah.
It moves it away from abutting neighborhoods.
Right.
And number two, it makes the land that's deeded back to the town more of a block of land. It's
Right.
not bisected by anything.
Well, it's not being used as the buffer.
Or as a buffer, right? So I think that's, from our perspective, desirable.
Yeah.
For whatever purposes we may choose to use it for, whether it's a trail or if it's just for open space or whatever it might be. I think it's more desirable for us to have it in that full configuration.
Right. And I just want to make a correction on the meeting that we had. The representative from UGC, who was Mr. Powers, presented this particular map, this rendering. And during the discussion, he realized he was using the wrong map and the wrong plans.
This is at the
The Affordable Housing Trust
Okay.
meeting.
Yeah.
And that's when he went back and he came back with the original plan that we had all seen.
We had seen from
with-
last
with- from the
meeting.
last meeting,
Yeah.
where the road dissects, central, right up through the piece of property there.
Yeah.
And it was asked of him several times that, why the change? And he couldn't give a specific answer. And again, he was just making a presentation. He said he doesn't answer for UGC. And I understood that, and he asked me a specific question about the board. And I told him I can't answer that question because I am a member of the board, but I don't speak for the board and on their behalf. They haven't given me that authority to do so.
Yeah.
I said, so whatever I say to you, later on during this meeting is from the Affordable Housing Trust and not as a board member.
Right.
So he needed to understand that, and then, when the meeting was over with, if we had that discussion, I, specifically said, why wouldn't you wanna go after this, this plan? He said, and he couldn't give me he couldn't give me a valid answer.
And fair enough. I mean, I can, but the fact is, we've got two different representations.
Oh, yeah.
One, at least from my perspective, is more desirable than the other. I don't think, we have a member missing tonight, so I don't think it's fair for us to come to an agreement that, A is better than B. I mean, I think we can discuss it among ourselves at least. But, you know, that's my perspective for those important reasons. Jen?
So I just want to point out that one of the reasons that this particular point is important to consider is I think it was clear that UGC at the last meeting when they presented that they were strongly considering a 40B, and to walk through that steps, they have to essentially file an A&R as part of our agreement that we will receive a property as part of the sale of this property, and we have to agree because we have interest in the property, and so obviously, you know, certainly we'd like to come to an agreement with him rather than having to sort of fight it out, but this is why I think this in particular is a very important conversation.
And I think this is you know, I don't want to be dismissive of, you know, UGC or dismissive or disrespectful or, you know, certainly of the company or the project. But I do think that there's, you know, we are probably, if they go the whatever route they decide to go, you know, more than likely we're going to enter into some kind of development agreement. So we need to have our position very clear. And you know, what Jen just stated, you know, is very, it's a very important key point. If we do not agree to the parameters, they can't go to DHCD and show ownership of property, which they're required to do. So, you know, I think this is potentially a good project. I think it's a good product. I think, you know, with some, you know, certainly some reasonable modifications, I think it's, you know, we could probably agree to something.
Yeah, and I think, you know, Mike outlined for us it was a good summary and a good, I think, summary of what he thinks we should be pushing for, which I'm generally in agreement with. I mean, we are, I guess, partners with these folks in one form or another, so hopefully we can come to a mutually agreeable agreement and be able to move forward. Right. So we may or may not get everything we want, and they may not get everything they want, but hopefully it'll be, you know, something feasible, reasonable in the end, and we can move ahead.
Well, I think also the fact that, you know, the history of 40Bs in Ashland, and I suspect in many other communities, can be a very long process. And if it's adversarial and contentious, then it could take years, right? So I would imagine it would behoove everyone to have come to the table with, you know, the willingness to, right?
I would think that's the right thing to do.
Yeah.
Come in and use the word compromise.
Again, Yolanda?
So I just have a couple of questions. So this, you know, the plan that's up there with that road, right, and the apartments sticking down. So that was one of the first ones we saw in January, except that I don't remember the apartments sticking down like that, the townhomes. Because that's a little concerning to me in regards to the amount of open space that they are required to give us.
So I think if they took if we were to look at the configuration that they showed us last 2 weeks ago.
Right.
Change the road to this particular format and reduce several of the buildings.
Right.
To get to roughly, I think we're looking at maybe 160 some odd apartments instead of 180. I think that's a very doable project.
And I agree with you. I think in looking at this product, and I actually got to drive by one of their products in Florida one time, I think they want to do the right thing in regards to providing a product that we do know we have a need for here in Ashland and in the region for senior living that's a little bit different. That it's just a matter of finding the right number and finding, you know. So what are our next steps, right? We know that they're looking to go for a 40B. We know that we need to determine the amount of acreage that we're supposed to get back. So what is our next step in regards to talking to them? They've spoken to Affordable.
Yeah.
I know Michael is trying to do some stuff with them.
I would suggest that at our next meeting, when we have a full board, that again, we do spell out what our preferred
Okay.
footprint, our project, what our preferred, since we are integral to this, I
Right.
think we have every right to do so, and particularly if we're going to enter into a development
Right.
agreement. So I think we have to be clear. And then I think we also have to be clear as to what potential compromises or concessions
Right.
we
Are
would be willing to make
Right.
to, to massage the project. And I think it's, I certainly, I'm not a negotiator, I'm not, this is not my background, but I think it just, it doesn't seem to be that complicated, actually.
Right. We should be able to come to some agreement with them.
I would think so. And in the past, we've kind of given, Michael kind of we've agreed to kind of broad outlines of
Yeah.
the things he should negotiate, and hopefully he'll be able to do that and come back, and we can have a discussion.
So I would defer this again
To the next
to
meeting.
the next meeting, when
Okay.
we have a full board and our entire team is here, and we can,
And just for clarification, we're really talking about what he outlined in his memo to us, right? More or less?
basically, that's
yeah.
what
Right.
we're,
Okay.
yes, yeah, good. All right, so moving on
So,
to,
before we move on, can I just give a quick, another update on the
sure,
projects going on in the RTD?
yeah,
So folks have probably noticed that, Citizen Energy has started the solar array project.
Oh, that's
So,
them.
they-
Oh,
yes,
I
so
thought
they
it
have
was the
started to,
Yeah.
clear trees.
right.
Jeez.
And so you can really see that, up on the hill. And they're starting to work pretty fast. Their construction, schedule is over the next 4 months. In the next few weeks, they'll start really be moving materials. They're hoping to have the arrays, up and functioning by about Thanksgiving. And then,
Wow.
so
That
once
is
they get,
fast.
well, yeah, I mean, they're moving pretty
Are
quickly.
they gonna be
That's like
putting
a
them on
2-month
cement bases?
Put them on, they call them ballasts,
Ballasts.
like the,
Yeah.
at the
Like the one up at
landfill.
the-
I
Okay.
didn't realize it was that large.
Yeah, so they'll start,
It's amazing.
yeah, they really start to
Wow.
move, so you'll see a lot of activity, and people have already noticed. I
Yeah.
mean, it's
Yeah.
it's,
In question.
one of the projects, because Citizen Energy does have a sort of nonprofit arm that, we're going to start distributing some information. It's, people remember Joe for Oriole, there's Joe for Sun. And it's an initiative that for, R2 ratepayers, there is a program that you can, get a small, reduction on your electric bill each year, up to, I think they say about $300. They sort of outline, there are definitely, programs, it's for lower income, families, and, there's a way to sort of work through that. We have some information up here at our planning
So how can we
department.
get that out better to the residents?
We're working on it, we just got these flyers
Okay.
yesterday, and
Yeah.
so we were bringing them over to the community center, to the library. We're gonna
Okay.
try to post something on our website.
Okay, maybe
So-
next meeting, if it's more fleshed out, we can put it up here as
Absolutely.
well. And,
Great. So Jen, this is people who are part of the municipal aggregation program?
They're
or-
also part, yeah, so I was concerned about that. I asked, Peter, our town planner, to do a little research into that, and he confirmed
Oh,
that
so this
they-
is for anybody, any resident, really anybody,
Really, yeah.
whether they're on our plan or not. Is
That's
that
correct, right.
Yeah,
But they
okay.
would have to meet the requirements.
They have to meet the requirements,
I'd
the,
also
Oh,
recommend,
income.
Eligibility
Okay,
requirements.
Right.
I would also recommend if you have a PDF of the flyer, get it out to WACA-TV.
Sure.
So they can post it up between shows.
sure. And if we don't have it, I can certainly
Yeah.
scan this
Yeah.
in and send it, so we can do
okay,
that.
good. All right, anything else on RTD? One thing I think we should probably mention, the Y is engaged in some community outreach, and I know there's a survey that's
Yes.
available online.
Yep.
And I would encourage residents to, if they have an opportunity to do that survey and give some input as to, what they think is important in a facility like the Y coming to Ashland.
And the Y has done a little bit of clearing as well in their
Right.
location.
That's what I
Yeah.
want, okay.
Yeah,
And
good.
they'll be, they have that booth at Ashland Day where they'll be doing the survey as well.
Oh,
That's
nice.
correct, yes.
Yeah,
Yeah,
so.
very good. Okay, downtown improvements and construction updates.
So downtown continues to be very busy with construction projects. Just a quick update on the 2 water projects. So the Main Street Water Project, they've finished the cleaning and the lining of the pipe, and so they're working on some water quality tests, and they'll wait for results. But as early as early next week, we can be back moving our service back, and then removing the temporary pipe. So that will be happening in the next week or two to remove all of that. The Summer Street the component from Summer Street to Cherry has been completed. Again, they're doing the quality testing, and they'll start to move the service back, and then they're moving across the street to Linden, and that will take about a week or two. There's a temporary trench patch right now on Cherry. At the end of the project, they will do a permanent trench, so that temporary trench will stay there for a few more weeks. But that is moving in the right direction.
Yeah, good. Do you feel that it's been a, reasonably efficient,
Yeah, so it was really
process?
slow to start, particularly on the main street. We had hoped that, that would have been finished before school started, but once they got going, they were pretty efficient.
Yeah, okay, good.
And then Riverwalk.
Jen,
go
real
ahead.
quick on the water project, was there anything where when they were doing the cleaning and lining, they found they actually had to replace pipe?
I don't believe
That
so.
we know? Okay.
I don't believe so.
Okay.
But I can certainly confirm that. The Riverwalk project has, the bridge over the inlet has started, and so the construction fence went up, I believe, late last week. They received 2 large shipments, I think one on Monday and one on Tuesday, and they're starting to construct and actually do the pilings across the river. They're thinking they will be, starting in really constructing it today, tomorrow, and Saturday, and then their construction schedule is about 3 weeks to
3 weeks to construct the bridge?
to construct the bridge, yeah, to be
Wow.
complete, to be complete. And they're doing the coating now, so there's a special coating that helps the longevity of the timber. And so they're doing that, and then they come back after it's constructed and do any touch-ups that they need to after the winter to make sure it did well, and then they come back a year later
Yeah,
to then check on how it's doing, so they're moving pretty quickly.
yeah.
Can we get WACA in there to film some of this? Would that be okay?
Sure.
Should they contact you to?
Yes, and then we can just, because right now it's all closed off, we
Yeah,
can
that's
just
why I
coordinate
want to
with the
make sure
schedule,
that,
yeah,
yep, okay.
that'd be
thank you.
great.
Good. Anything else on downtown?
I don't think so.
Okay, moving on to the strategic plan.
So I actually had a meeting with the Collins Center, I believe, on Monday, and they're trying to help collate some of our notes from all of the outreach that we had done over the last, really, 2 years. And so they had some really high-level drafts for us to respond to. I provided some guidance to them on Monday, and I'm hoping to have a little bit more fleshed-out goals and strategies that we can bring and have and present in the next. It will probably take several months just because they're working through all of them and working through all of our handwritten notes. But it is at least moving in the right direction, and we're hoping to bring that to the town as soon as possible.
Good. Okay. Warren District.
Okay, so the Hall House, we had the RFP for disposition was due on yesterday, and we received one proposal. We're going through that now to make sure that it's met all the criteria, and then once we accept that, we can certainly discuss it further, but we're just going through those. The barn, we're still working on scheduling.
Can I just
Yeah, go ahead.
so is that good to just get one proposal? Were we hoping for more and?
So I didn't expect to get more, only because we had 2 walkthroughs and we only had, the
Oh.
same person came to both of those. We did have several people pull the bid document, so I know that people were aware of it. I think it's sort of a specialty project where you have we have a piece of property that we're asking somebody to renovate, but maintain its historic character, and there's a deed restriction that goes along with that, and so I do think there's a more narrow.
And do you think, is it a competitive proposal? I mean, are we gonna get good value for it, or, I guess it's, well.
So I think it's all relative. I think part of, one of our primary goals is to make sure that it's renovated. So right now, obviously, it's deteriorating and it's in tough shape. And so for somebody to bring it back to its vibrancy, and then also, maintain, that we won't have to worry about maintenance while still maintaining the deed restriction that sort of preserves its historic character. So I think that in terms of what the town can maintain and run, I think that's a real value, and so it's sort of a balance we have to figure out.
So you think this is potentially a feasible proposal?
I do, yeah. And then the barn, which we've been sort of talking about for the last couple months, we're still trying to schedule the demolition. We're trying to work with Framingham State so that we don't impact their event schedule as little as possible. And so we're hoping that that will happen within the next month.
With respect to the bond, are there any measures being taken to try to save the wood that's inside the structure itself? I've been told that the interior of that building has a lot of great pieces of wood that could be utilized instead of just getting torn down and thrown into a landfill.
So the last time that I spoke to anybody that's actually been inside of the barn, I thought that much of the wood was really in rough shape. I
Yeah.
know what people, they didn't think there was much to
Okay.
Yeah.
save. That being said, we have talked to the architect that we have retained, and just sort of thinking about even some of the, there's some granite pieces, pulling some of the
Mhm.
stuff, some of those artifacts out and potentially reusing them somehow, some way in the new structure, or create a bench out of the granite. So that's definitely something that David Foster is considering as we
Yeah.
move forward.
It is in rough shape, Joe.
Yeah.
When I was in there, and that was probably a year and a half ago. And it's not quite like the Valentine barn, which
Yeah.
has got, just these fantastic timbers, the
Mhm.
superstructure.
They were talking about wooden planks that were.
It probably is some, but,
Yeah, I mean, I don't know how much there is,
yeah,
but I'm saying if there is something that's there, maybe there's something that could be
Salvageable.
utilized.
yeah.
Yeah, it's been
and
reported to me.
refurbishing, a floor, maybe in the Valentine house, or maybe, at the Hall house, to give it that rustic look, to keep it, that.
Or at least if it's salvageable, we get some
Right.
value in the proposal.
Well,
or
I know
something.
before we went out to bid for the demo, David had talked to several salvage companies to say, is this something that you would actually want to, because you can actually get a better
Yeah.
cost for its demo, because they're gonna make a
Right.
profit, and there was not interest in that.
Oh,
Okay.
really?
Wow.
And so, and then also he has reported that, just sort of peeking in, he's sort of concerned just about the wood is definitely getting soft.
It's soft.
Yeah,
Oh,
Mm,
yeah.
okay.
Okay,
So
thank
we're-
you.
Okay. That's it for the Warren District, Jen? Okay, next item is the update on public safety building.
I don't have much to update from the last meeting. I think since the last time we met, PAR, which is our wetland scientists through our architects, HKT, have been out to the site, and they've done they've done some borings, but they're also in the process of delineating the wetlands or flagging the wetlands, and so that we can go in front of conservation. So we're going to proactively go to conservation before we have the building designed, so that we have a line for the wetlands, so we know where to put the building. I spoke to FRE, which is Fafford's building company, and that we're gonna actually do it for the entire property, because some of the wetlands on his property and the buffer will actually impact where we can put our building, and so we're working through that process.
Have you heard back from them? I'm sure they agreed that
They
would be
did
okay.
agree to it in
Okay.
writing, yeah.
So, Joe, I don't believe we have a public safety building meeting scheduled at this
No,
point,
I was
so,
to talk to Jen,
Okay.
Jen about that this afternoon.
all right,
But I think when Mike gets back, and
yeah,
we'll schedule on, because I think Mike needs to be there when we talk about the financial aspect of it.
yes. And I think we need to, start to consider public forums
Well,
as well, so,
that's
Yeah.
my main reason, to get everybody together to do that,
yeah.
get the flyers and get everything done.
Okay, good.
And get the machine running.
Okay, all right, so that's our update on our project priorities, or priority projects. Old new business, first order of business is to appoint Donna Bresnick to the Ashland Cultural Council for a 3-year term that will expire on 9/19 of '22. We've received Donna's talent bank form. So I think most of us know Barry, right, as a former selectman at that time, and Donna and Barry have been longtime residents here in Ashland, so any discussion, any questions? We did receive affirmation from the Cultural Council.
That they think
I'm
would
happy
be
to
good.
see Donna getting involved.
Yeah.
It's been
It's
working
nice to
so
see
well.
that, yeah.
Yeah.
She's probably tired of having to look at Barry all the time, so she needs to get out of the house.
All right, no. Do I hear a motion for
Make a motion to
appointing?
appoint Donna Bresnick to the Ashland Cultural Council for a 3-year term that will expire on 9/19/22.
Second.
So a motion and second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye, and that carries 4-0 and 1 absent. So congratulations to Donna for stepping up to the
Yeah,
Cultural
thank you.
Council.
Yeah, it's great.
And by the way, the Cultural Council did hold they had a reception on Sunday at the Corner Spot for last year's recipients. Their grant process has opened for the coming year, so believe they accept applications through, I think, November, and then they get awarded at the beginning of the new year. So that process is now open.
And I stopped by earlier and chatted with them. They actually get an increase in funding, so that was good.
Yeah.
Good
Yeah.
news
Yeah.
from state funding. So
Well, we've
nice.
given also, we've applied some budget dollars, I believe, to the Cultural Council as well, but I think the state's
Yeah,
bumped up a little
State
bit.
numbers went up
Right,
yeah.
this year.
yeah.
Yeah. Okay, next order of business is to approve the request for one-day licenses for Zealous Beer Company at the Corner Spot for Saturday, October 5th, from 9 to 6 p.m. and noon, I'm sorry, what did I say, 9?
And, they're starting early.
Noon to 6 p.m. and Sunday, October 6th, from noon to 6 p.m. Discussion on this request? I
Nice to
think.
see that they've modified, so they're not going past 6
Yeah.
PM, and they're not gonna be there on Thursday and Friday, so.
Right. So we've
From the
got all of
original
his,
Yeah.
When's he coming to
information.
town?
What's that?
When's he moving into town?
So we know Zealous, obviously, he's been with us for a few years now, and,
Well, I think this might be, now because of when they're doing it, I think it's related to some events that are actually happening
It is.
yeah.
at the Corner Spot for those
Is
times.
there Culture Fest going on or
Culture
something like
Fest,
that?
yeah.
So Fall Fest and there's a
Fall
band
Fest,
and.
yeah,
Yeah.
that's it.
Good.
So-
So do I hear a motion to approve these 2 one-day licenses?
So moved.
Need a second?
Second.
I've got a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
And that carries 4-0-1. Next item, and I don't know who this applies to, but this is for, it says,
It's-
approve the modification of the one-day license approved on September 4th to the following
Isn't this for
September.
Wine Empire, for their, there was a festival
I
that,
believe
there was
it's
an
for
Indian festival or something that was supposed to happen in September, and they canceled because of the weather.
I think this is actually for Flying Dreams, so we heard this at our
Oh.
last meeting, and so initially, they were gonna come, from 5 PM to 10. I'm going to confirm that though, but,
Okay.
I
So
am-
this is Flying Dreams. I think they were at our
Oh.
last
Yeah, so
meeting.
they're
Worcester.
modifying just
Oh,
because
okay.
of the,
Okay.
Triple E concerns,
Okay.
and so
So they're
initially,
just
So-
modifying the time.
they're just moving it
Moving the
back
time, so
several-
we're just
several hours.
modifying, okay, can you confirm it's?
I am pulling it up
okay.
right this second.
But we can still move to modify, so a motion to do so?
So moved.
I'll second the.
Okay, a motion and a second, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye, and that carries 4-0-1, and we've modified the license for
Flying Dreams.
Flying Dreams, okay, very good. Next item is a update, whatever that might be, on the Eversource, the status of the declaratory judgment proceeding. Jen, I think you have a little bit of information on that.
I don't have much, but I do have a little. So we don't have any judgment. I spoke to counsel today. The next step in this process is called a case management conference. So we're responsible in scheduling that. So they've scheduled it and they're working through sort of the administrative processes for that, and that will be scheduled for September 30th. And council believes that we'd have some information. Eversource has filed their response. They didn't provide any necessarily new information, or they didn't provide an affirmative defense. And so, council thought that's sort of indicative of them wanting to, talk about the merits of our arguments, and that's likely, how they'll present it. So they're really sort of just, I think, outlining
Interesting.
They're denying some of our requests essentially.
So the, as in a related vein, the energy siting, for those who are keeping up on the siting board process, Eversource has responded to questions from the siting board relative to the easement language. So
They did,
I suspect that they posted that, I think, on September the 4th. So there's 3 PDF documents
look
that
at
are
that.
on that. You might want to take a look at it. But I suspect that their argument before the court for the judgment is probably no different than what they've responded to
Right.
the siting board. So you can get a taste of that.
Yep.
Okay, anything else on, I think, Conservation Commission update on
So
relative to,
Eversource is on the
Eversource.
next agenda, and that is scheduled for Monday
Monday?
evening.
Okay.
Do you remember what part, where are they in the process? Is it,
So they've had several continuances where they haven't.
so these are just more information to be presented now?
So the 23rd?
Yes, I believe so, yeah.
Okay. All right, next item on the agenda is an update on the National Citizen Survey.
So postcards for the sample went out on Friday, so if you received a postcard asking you to fill out a survey, we are asking you that you do that. So far, they went out Friday, so they thought maybe between Monday and Tuesday, people start to really receive them. We've already received 33 responses, so thank
Wow.
you to those people who took the time. I know that
Wow.
it can be a little bit long, but it's definitely valuable information, and we're sort of looking forward to. We're hoping that we have a similar response rate, which is right around the 34% that we had last time. If you didn't receive a postcard and you're dying to give us your input, we'd love to have it. In about 2 weeks, we will have a link on our website where people can opt in. And then they'll do an analysis of those responses as well for us.
Okay. Thank you. Next agenda item is an update on the triple E scenario.
Okay. So we've been trying to provide as much information as we are receiving from the Department of Public Health in a pretty timely manner out to the public on our website. And so typically we try to push that out on Mondays unless we have new information. So this afternoon, it was confirmed that the second round of aerial spraying had been completed in Ashland. So much of the town had been completed late last week and earlier this week, but there was a swath that they hadn't, due to weather or scheduling, they didn't do that. So that was done last night. The map has been updated on our website. And so that has been done this evening. We did receive a report from Department of Public Health that the 9th case of triple E was reported. It's out of Essex County. And so they've increased several communities, either to high or moderate, sort of on the North Shore. So it's just, really reminding people that this is still a serious concern and it will be through. So despite the fact that we've finished spraying, DPH has informed us that there's a million variations of how effective that spray can be, weather, sort of, precipitation that's in the air and sort of dissipate it. And so there is a real range of how effective that is. So they continue to urge everyone to take personal protective measures, meaning, wearing long sleeves and long pants when you're out, if you're out after dusk, obviously using spray that has DET, yeah.
Right.
And then obviously trying to avoid when you're in a critical or high-risk area outdoor activity after,
Right.
from dusk to dawn.
So just to confirm, we continue to be in the
We
critical
are.
status
Yeah, I don't expect that to change
until hard frost.
until a hard frost.
Right.
Are they continue to actively trap and monitor? I mean, do their traps show anything?
So they are still trying to trap and monitor. They said as the season, it's harder to trap them, and I don't know the reasons for that.
Yeah.
But they definitely, I know a few weeks ago they found another mosquito, and it wasn't related to necessarily a person or another mammal case.
Yeah, but they just found.
Yeah.
They're out back doing that, they have a trap out and back in
In
that
your
area.
house,
And
yeah. Mhm.
the truck was out there the other day monitoring it, checking it out and replacing
Yeah.
it, so.
Yeah.
So we did have a modification to our agenda relative to this particular agenda item, unforeseen development that we are going to address tonight. There was an event scheduled for October the 6th, a beer-related event. Again, that was scheduled from 6 p.m. until 10 p.m. over at the VFW. The organizer of that event, the Ashland Sporting Association, has decided to postpone that event until the future, most likely sometime in May or June of next year. So
Okay.
we're appreciative of that, of taking the proactivity of postponing it and responding to
Sure.
certainly the critical nature of
Mhm.
the
Very-
events.
Very
So-
wise.
All right, moving on is, the next item is 0 Tri-Street, discuss and vote on debt exclusion and special election. Now, in our packet, we have an analysis and a recommendation that Michael provided to us relative to doing this in the levy through a combination of free cash and a use of borrowing within our levy, rather than going to do a debt exclusion and doing a special election. So certainly the proposal, seems reasonable. I think from my perspective, given some of the projects that we have coming up, I think it would behoove us to try to work through this within the levy, because we know we're going to be going to debt exclusions for other projects. And
Exactly.
so, open it up for discussion.
By chance, do we have a map available of where this is for people who might not know where 0 Tri-Street property is? I don't know,
I
but,
don't think I have it
or can someone easily explain it?
So any discussion about this particular proposal?
Yeah,
So, okay, go
No,
ahead.
I
One at a
just, I
time.
agree with your perspective on it, Steve. I think it makes sense that Mike's put together a proposal, and we've kind of talked about that. It's a significant project, but it's not an enormous amount. I just don't think it justifies going to a debt exclusion. And
Okay.
I agree with, Mike's, at least his preliminary plan for financing,
Okay.
so.
Yolanda?
Yeah, so I mean, the amount that we're looking at is, is $300,000, a little bit more. So certainly, as said, we have other projects that we know we want to do as debt exclusion. If there's a way to do this within our levy limit, in our current debt service, I think that makes a lot more sense.
Yeah.
Certainly from a perspective of having to either, one, add this to our fall town meeting and then do a separate ballot election. I mean, the cost just for that would be not enormous, but we'd be able to put some of that toward this debt
Right.
service. So I think
Okay.
it makes sense to do it this way that Michael
Okay.
has proposed.
This will still need to go to town meeting. We just won't be
Oh, that's true.
required to do
The-
a
right.
special election.
Right,
So
that's true.
it would
Sorry, I
behoove the
misspoke.
residents to be well represented at town meeting. So,
If you can't pull up a map tonight, that's okay, Jen. But I
and we
think,
can review this, actually. Why don't we do that on the
Yeah.
second? We'll review it, and just so people know where the property is and
Right.
And what we're
where its
talking about
relationship
and-
is to, some areas that are,
Yeah, and if we can get a good graphic on
right.
Yeah.
the website,
'Cause
that'd be great.
When will we have to close the warrant for town meeting?
We will close the warrant our second meeting.
Okay.
of-
Yeah, so if we could look at this the first meeting, so
yeah,
people
we
could
just
be
to
aware.
do
and
that
then-
again, and we can
Yeah.
just,
I'd
Now,
rather have all the board members here to do that.
Yeah, that too.
yeah, I think that's been our,
Right.
I did talk to Brandy about this, and she was certainly supportive of going this route. But, in terms of, doing an
Actual
official
voting.
vote,
Yeah.
I think
Yeah.
it's
I
good
think that
form,
makes
right?
sense.
Yeah,
Okay.
so the only thing, so as long as you're not going, the debt exclusion, we would have to call the election, by the 25th, so,
Of October.
so if there was,
So the consensus tonight is,
We're not- so-
not a vote, but the consensus is that we're not moving towards a debt exclusion. All right.
Yeah, I would say.
Fair to say?
I would
Yeah,
think,
that would
that's
be
fair to
So
say.
no need to do anything
Perfect.
beyond our next meeting,
I can
right?
volunteer. Right.
Okay.
Right, so we can have a map available, so, 0 Tri-Street is, located near Adams Street, several acres back there that, was going to be potentially developed, into either, a subdivision. They had proposed a cluster development initially, and then there has been some discussion about a 40B.
Okay.
And so, But we can certainly have it available, have a outlined,
That'd be great.
Good.
Thank you.
because it would go, we'll obviously have that ready for town meeting as well.
Okay, good, thank you. Okay, last item on our old new business is a request to do work on, I think this has been changed to September the 26th,
6.
starting at 8 PM. This work would be at the intersection of Cherry, Summer, and Union Streets, and it would require shutting down the water, which would not impact any residents. Once the new connection is complete, water would be restored. The work is anticipated to be completed in 4 to 6 hours. So any,
And what is the reason for that happening? Is this still part of the clean project that's being done?
So it's part of, it's part of the downtown,
Okay.
that water project. It would impact, and the reason for doing it in the evening is it would impact, the Marathon Deli, plaza. And
Yep.
so obviously,
Oh, okay.
you
Yeah,
know,
we
you
don't
don't
wanna
wanna
do
do
that.
that during
Yeah.
work hours. It does not, impact residents on
Okay.
President's Row or,
And we need to approve this because it's happening at night.
because it's happening in the
Yeah.
evening, yeah.
all right, entertain a motion?
I move that we approve the work to happen on Thursday, September 6th, after 8 PM for the water pipes as described.
Could I amend that a
Sure.
little bit? Seeing that we have a triple E warning going on right now that there's no activity, even though it is town property because it's on a roadway, that they take the proper precautions and have the proper clothing and spray, so that way the workers that are out there are
Or
not
not put,
put in harm's way.
I would accept that amendment.
Okay,
Okay,
Yeah, we have,
well done.
okay,
we've already addressed that.
okay.
So, yeah,
My
DPW
concern, right.
has,
Yeah, I
we
think
have
it's good to
purchased-
add it,
but
so
yeah,
that's
yeah,
good.
certainly, just to be
Okay.
sure.
So we've got a motion and an amendment added to it. Need a second?
Second.
So motion amended and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed, so that carries 401. And we're on to the our development project update. And we've got 3 projects listed, 128 Main Street, Route 126 projects, and 81 West Main Street. So Jen, if you want to
Sure.
start us off?
So, as people have probably recognized, 128 Main has been demoed. They are looking to start doing sort of the site prep and that work over the next several weeks, and then they'll really start doing construction between, so some of the foundation may happen at the end of this month, and then they'll start the construction of the building basically through April next year. But really, the exterior should be through November, right? So they'll have it weather tight, and they'll start doing the
They'll do the
interior work
interior
over the
work.
winter.
Okay.
With it, right now, obviously, this is sort of just what he's laid out for our building department is basically through the end of April, be doing construction.
Very good. All right, 126?
So first we can start with the Route 126, road project, the revitalization of 126. They have, Mass DOT has asked for continuance at conservation, and they're sort of working through that process. They are scheduled for their next hearing or next meeting October 7th. We've reached out to both Green and Mass DOT to ensure that shouldn't impact the procurement schedule, to sort of start moving that process. We haven't received confirmation only because people are on vacation, but when I spoke to Megan, our conservation agent, she wasn't super concerned about that. They were just sort of she had several comments that they were working to properly respond to, and that way when they come, they should be able to move through that process. The second project I think we wanted to discuss was 12 Pond Street, which is the old Fusion building or Marconi's building. That planning permit has been filed, and it was stamped into the clerk's office on Monday. So they're working on scheduling the next meeting. They'll be in front, I believe, on October 10th. And we're hoping, it should be online now, but if it isn't, it will be online tomorrow. I know Emma, our assistant town planner, and Peter, our town planner, were working on that today to make sure that all of that was online and accessible.
And are we still using co-urbanized at this time, or
So
are
they're
we
moving toward-
transitioning?
We're trying to transition away. It's just a little bit cumbersome. We've had several planners now talk about how cumbersome it is. And we have the capability on our own website, and so it would be under, but I will confirm where it is. It might actually be on already.
So co-urbanized was cumbersome to use?
Yes, because you have to, yes, because
To
they have
upload
to, yes, to upload it and then sort of maintain that, because you're also maintaining the other schedule, and so it's just two different platforms, and if you're not, you can, it has much more capabilities than we have, you can put in all sorts of notes, and we used it, it was a great tool for downtown, because it was interactive,
Yeah.
but we can probably more efficiently get, all of the information to the public if we just used our website.
Okay.
And so we are.
So the capability's not gonna go away, just how we're providing it to ourselves, our employees, and our citizens is changing?
Right.
Okay.
'Cause you have
So
to-
that will be up on the website at some point, maybe early next week?
It
would
should
you
be there
say?
tomorrow.
Okay,
Okay.
very good.
I'm just looking right now to see if it's on.
So, and that will be on the planning board's agenda for October the 10th.
That's correct.
Okay, very good. And 81 West Union Street.
Oh, wait, so let's just, and then 310 Pond, which
Oh,
is
I'm
also
sorry.
under the 126. So 310 Pond
Is the
Um,
Blockbuster building.
is the
Yeah.
Blockbuster building.
Right.
That's moving its way also through the planning board. It's, will also go in front of design review, design review. They had hoped to have that meeting, last week, but they had a quorum issue because, one of the members had to recuse themselves and one of the people didn't make it that they had hoped, so.
What's the proposal for
Yeah,
that?
what's the,
So it's an American type cuisine restaurant.
Restaurant, okay.
And so they were in front of the planning board, last week.
Good
Some of the
site.
residents, particularly from the the condos, had come out with some concerns. Really, it was traffic, noise, smell. I think that they will be able to address those
Yeah.
if they seemed like some reasonable concerns and the
Yeah.
applicant was
They were
working with them.
very, I thought, very reasonable. I watched that section of the meeting, and I thought that the residents from Spyglass had reasonable concerns, particularly about, how you enter that plaza by going up Spyglass and taking the left. Now, one of the things they did talk about, of course, was, how they were going to factor in the reconfiguration with the
Right.
roundabout and so
Sure,
on.
sure.
And right now, what's happening, the entrance that goes into the old Sears Plaza, it had that curved way, and people taking a left turn where there's no left turn to be
Correct.
had, right? So that
I would
all
never
get-
do that. I would never.
No, I know you never did. But it will be reconfigured so
That's
that
good,
there's
yeah.
less of a, it's not, traffic flow will be different,
Yeah.
so. But they appeared to be very amenable, and it
Good.
sounded like it's been, I didn't realize it's been basically 15 years since we threw away all of our VHS machines, right?
Yeah, right,
Yeah.
15 years, wow.
now, there have been a couple of other businesses in there along the way,
Yeah, a little
not
bit,
permanent, but
right.
not very
No, not,
successful.
yeah, but.
Well, let's hope this one, because
Yeah.
it's been a long, and with Sears closed, how long, well, it's been what, 5 years for Sears? Maybe? I
Yeah,
don't
it's
know.
been,
Has it been
that's
that
been a challenging site for
Yeah.
quite a while.
3 years ago,
Yeah.
a pool company wanted to purchase that property in Parsons. At that point in time, they weren't interested
Wow.
in
In
selling.
selling.
Parsons,
They were
yeah.
just, leasing.
Yeah,
And they loved it because it was right on a main drag.
Yeah, yeah.
They wanted their pools to be shown,
Yeah.
out along the side. It would've been an ideal location. But
Well, in some ways, it's our most obvious and biggest development opportunity in town still. I mean, now it's kind of, we've
So
got
does
the
Parsons
store,
still
but-
own it? Or did
I
they
believe-
sell
I
it
believe-
when,
I believe they sold it with that.
when the Habitat, the Restore went in?
They actually bought it? No, they're leasing
No,
it.
they didn't, they're leasing
They're
it, but
leasing
there
it,
was a
but
new,
The building itself was part of, they sold that directly to that restaurateur that's coming in.
oh,
Yeah,
okay.
I think
it
it's-
sounds like, if I got the gist of what they were describing, their cuisine, it's kind of, if you've been to the 110 Grill,
Hmm.
Oh,
so that
yeah.
type
Good
of
design,
concept,
yeah.
which
Yeah.
kind of contemporary
Wow.
American,
Yeah.
that type of environment. I think they were talking maybe 120 seats inside.
Maybe some
And
nice
outside
outdoor
as well,
space.
And so
outside
seating
seating area.
outside as
Yeah,
well,
good.
so it
Yeah, it could be
sounded
really
like a
nice,
nice
yeah.
concept.
So they're working through that. So they'll go to design review, as will, the old Fusion,
12 Pond.
yeah.
Yeah,
We just have to find a date, so
Okay.
they'll be working through
Okay,
that
very good.
process as well.
Nice.
Yeah,
and what else on Pond?
that's it.
That's it, so now we have 81 West Union Street.
Yep, so they, were in front of, 81 West Union is doing the second phase, so where the storage facility is, right by the middle school.
Oh, okay.
So the second, Rodenheiser had the second phase, which, includes an office building and then construction bays.
Oh.
They were in front of the planning board, on the 26th, I believe. And the planning board has asked for different elevations, cause it's really hard to sort of discern. Obviously, that piece of, property sort of takes a little bit of an L, and so these
Mhm.
buildings are in the back right behind those houses, and
Mhm.
so they're working through their planning board process, I believe. They filed, some updated elevations that will also be, sent to the planning board, but then also it will be updated on the website as well.
Yeah, the
Okay,
presentation
so-
was a little shoddy at best.
Yeah, I thought so too, I did watch that, but, you know, I think the planning board seems to me to be pretty sensitive to that whole
Yeah.
project at this point in time, so I think it'll be an interesting process to watch, but,
Yeah.
what else?
So
On
the only
your-
other thing, sort of the old Papagenos, sort of in the same plaza as Honto. There is a, restaurant that's also looking to come in there, that's working through they're working through some issues, just obviously sort of with a fit out issues that they would have to deal with. But that's working, which would be also great, again, as a vacant,
Yeah.
it's always great to have
Yeah.
some.
From what the rumor that I've heard is, it was the next town over in Southborough, one of their breakfast shops that will be coming
So
over.
it'll be a
I've
breakfast
heard the
lunch shop
same,
as,
yeah.
as
Yeah.
I understand it, and they just have to.
Yeah, very good. Okay, moving on to town manager reports, including but not limited to warrant article update.
So today was the last day for, notice of intent for the warrant, and so I just wanted to take the opportunity, we have to just sort of build out the frame of the actual warrant, but, can sort of quickly go through what I think will be, which will make up the warrant articles. First, we voted to change the name from Board of Selectmen to Select Board, and so that has to go to town meeting. The Sustainability Committee has asked us to bring the net zero resolution, so they presented at the last one, and we told them we would bring the resolution to town meeting, and so, that will be on there. The sale of the Hall House, assuming that we, yes, the proposal accepted, the purchase of Zero Tri Street would have to be on there as well. Then we have our sort of more normal, special fall town meeting, free cash allocation, any budget adjustments that we may need, the senior property tax exemption, as well as, and then we have two CPA funding proposals. One's $5,000 for the town forest to sort of finish some of their projects that they're working on, and then the second one is, I believe, $100,000 thereabouts for Mill Pond. So after the bridge is constructed, they've obviously really ripped up the park there, and so to sort of beautify that and also tie it in to the downtown streetscape design, so that there's some continuity as you work through. So it'll be a really nice, I think, gateway.
Yeah,
And the CPA was really supportive of that as well.
that's great.
Including any additional parking over there, or?
Well, so we'll definitely have to sort of frame out the parking better, and we can certainly hopefully we can stripe it. We don't know
Yeah.
how far that's gonna,
Okay.
how far that will go, but
Right.
certainly I think that would be helpful.
Yeah.
And grade it. It's, a little bit of,
Yeah.
It
it's a
gets
little
muddy.
rough there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Good.
And
Sounds
then
great.
there's two potential zoning articles that the planning board are entertaining, so I don't know that it will actually, they're working through it, they obviously have, several steps that they need to meet, but one is to amend the industrial uses, which would exclude a mini storage facility, and also landscaping in commercial highway zone in the CV, which is the village commerce, and then the CN zone, which is neighborhood commerce division, and then Their second one is sort of related, and it's amending the height in the commercial highway district. And so currently it states that you can have 3 stories or 35 feet high if it's a dwelling. Otherwise, you can add an additional 5 feet. And what they'd like to do is strike that additional 5 feet. Other districts or zones have a very similar height restriction of that, like 35 feet, and they have a special, there's an opportunity for additional height with a special permit. And so I don't know if they'll make it a special permit process or if they will just make it not allowed. So they're working through that, but it would just sort of mirror the other districts. I think that that storage facility may be about 40 feet, and it's pretty high. So I think that was
Good. Any discussion on warrant articles? Sounds like light lifting,
Yeah, it'll be
yeah.
Well, there are some important things on here.
There
but,
is, yeah.
And it's November 20th, right?
it is.
Yeah, okay.
Very good. Okay, time for board reports. So we'll start with
Sure.
Rob.
Yeah, the one, and I think we've touched on this before, but it really kind of struck me over the past week, was this, the upcoming construction on the Mass Pike and at the entrance, I think where it hits Storrow Drive, and the latest proposal is to reduce, so you're gonna have problems with the Pike, and at the same time, they're gonna reduce commuter rail from 2 tracks to 1. And so I think we had, it was at the 495 partnership, took a position that that should not happen. And I'm sure that the folks, in the collaborative are concerned about it. So I just think it's something that we should, I'm think as an individual, I'm gonna get in touch with Transit Matters, who's a group that seems to be, I don't know if you've read they're putting out a report, they put out a report that's similar to Vision 2050, talking about electrification and more frequent train service. I think that's really, so the overall problem, I think they're talking about actually 10 years of construction on the Pike. It's unbelievable. And so that kind of, slowdown and obstruction over that long a period of time to our two main routes to Boston from here could really have a pretty big impact on us and our economy.
Did you see that, so they did a presentation in Framingham?
Is this Transit Matters? Or?
No, it
or-
was the DOT came
Yes,
out to
right.
Framingham,
Yes.
and Senator Spilka had some questions that apparently she has now gotten answered. I think
Oh.
you can go to her website, and the answers to some of her questions are there
Yeah,
from Mass
yeah.
DOT
Right.
to address some of these similar things.
Right.
I haven't
Mhm.
read the answers, but apparently they are available now. Mass
that's
DOT
good
has
to hear.
responded
Yeah.
to her questions, because it was similar kind of things. How can
Right.
you do this? You're impacting the people from Metro West who, these are their 2 ways of getting into and out
Exactly.
of Boston, so.
And so I think it's something, we should keep track of and advocate in our own ways or as a body as we see it, and keep, a look at that process, so, anyway. So I wanted to just bring that up.
Good,
And
good.
that's all I have.
That's it, okay. Joe?
What I'd just like to say that I appreciate all the work that you folks have done in the office, especially with the warrant, because that's tedious, and keeping tabs with all the projects that we have in town. Ashland is definitely changing its scope and its appearance over the last 2 or 3 years, and even more so in the next 5 years. Ashland Day's coming up this Saturday, Saturday the 21st. The hours are from 10 to 4. Most of the vendors will be there between 7 and 9 o'clock setting up. For families who are interested, there will be a bike parade, as we always have. Any child is more than welcome to come in to decorate their bike. The theme again this year is Ashland Town Pride. Show your pride in the town, and wear it either as a uniform or dress your bike up in a manner that safely do it. And registration's at 9 o'clock. The parade starts at 9:30. It starts at the pavilion on Summer Street, and it ends up at the front of the gazebo with a co-host. Steve Mitchell will be standing there for a few minutes until I get
Are
there.
you voting?
It'd be fun, it's supposed to be perfect weather on
I get
Saturday.
it. It's
Yes,
just,
it'll be
I'm-
very
So
nice.
it should be an
we're blessed.
enormous turnout,
I
so
hope
that's
so.
great.
We're blessed, and the other thing is that this year we did something different. We're doing a silent auction. Friday's the last day that you can actually go online on the website, which is ashlandday.com, to put your bids in for the items. that's online. But all day on Saturday, at the Ashland Day Food Tent, there will be the Ashland Day auction table. A good portion of the prizes and items will be there on display. And Mr. Gath will be standing by for you folks to come in and register your your bid. You know, put a lot of zeros before that decibel. That would be great. All the proceeds go to sponsor the day itself and some of the other things that we do throughout the year. And we're looking forward to a good event and a good response from everybody for the auction. And that's about it. We're just resting up until chaos is on
Saturday.
Friday.
Until Friday night.
Yeah,
Well,
so,
yeah, it's, you know, weather is all important for these community events,
Yep.
so you don't have to worry about that.
you know, this is the first time that I don't, but still,
Yeah,
I'll still say my
It's gonna be
prayers.
a nice
Oh, yeah.
day.
yes.
But that's
Okay.
it. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
You're welcome. Yolanda?
So an update, we had at our last meeting decided to have Ashland run for the MPO seat for the Metro West region. That election, nomination papers are due by the end of September. I've started to reach out to various communities to get support. There was one community I reached out to, and unfortunately, they've already signed nomination papers for another community. And each community can only nominate one
Right,
community,
right,
so. But I'm reaching out, and I've gotten some positive response from people,
Great.
so hopefully we'll get that taken care of.
Yeah,
Cool.
good luck.
Thank you. Metro West Regional Collaborative, we have our next meeting coming up on Thursday, the 26th in Wayland. Gonna be talking about first mile, last mile transportation issues. And it looks like there is a bill going before the House and the Senate to create, transportation districts, similar like we have business districts, to allow for communities to add some taxes or add some fees to businesses in their community to help pay for some of this last mile, first mile.
Yeah.
I don't know how I feel about that, but that bill is
Interesting.
going forward.
And-
Yeah, yeah, it's still like brand new, it's gonna be
Interesting
proposed, so.
concept. I just want to tell you a story about that. In Southborough, so I take the train, you know, west to Worcester, and it's relatively quiet. There's a number of people on it, but and sometimes it's actually getting busier and busier. But you stop at Southborough, and there's nothing there. There's a little
Right.
store,
Right.
but about 30 young, high-tech looking people get off, and they go to these corporate shuttle vans and
Yeah.
take off to.
Yeah,
I think they're going to.
the 990, the one
yeah,
there by Staples
990
and,
So there's some, and I think Marlboro's gonna run a shuttle
Yeah.
starting soon from downtown to
You would
to
think Natick
Southborough.
would have that need as well.
Yeah,
to
yeah,
get
I've
to
never
their
seen that
industrial
there,
parks.
yeah.
Yeah.
Interesting, but there's
Yeah.
an example of
Yeah.
people doing it.
Right.
It's, you
well,
know,
and what's interesting is that part of the conversation was, well, we have our RTA, so how would we work with our RTA to either increase it here in Ashland, or if we
Yeah.
decided to do something?
Yeah.
But like I said, that's still very new.
sure.
Yeah.
And then the last thing I have is happy birthday to our chair.
Oh,
It's
That's
his
right.
birthday today.
Thank you.
I keep thinking it's tomorrow, even though.
Thank you. No place I'd rather be.
Oh, I can.
good for you, Yolanda.
Thank you very much.
You
Appreciate
You are
that.
welcome,
Yeah.
and that's
Just
all I have.
another day in paradise, right?
We'll make it up tomorrow.
So, a few things I have. I just want to remind people, residents, that the BAA grant round, the fall round, is open. It's open through the end of the month. We're accepting applications, and then my colleague Rob and I will
Yes,
then
we'll
meet to
mete out
review and
justice.
make a recommendation. So that's coming up. Also, now, speaking of BAA, we did receive notification that we're getting 22 numbers again this year. So that program is available for residents to put their name into a lottery to run on behalf of the Ashland community in the grant program, essentially. So I'm assuming we're still going to, we'll get confirmation from Susan when she returns, but that we will be, the relationship we have with the Rare Order Disease Organization is still ongoing. So, so that's going on. I wanted to just comment on the Dragonfly Festival from a couple weeks ago. It was very, very well attended. It was great. It was the weather, of course. The weather's everything. The weather turned out perfect. We were able to There was just a very nice flow of attendees between the Corner Spot and the Historical Society. I want to thank the Historical Society for their support. They've got a beautiful grounds in the back, and so many people don't realize it. They see the barn, they see the Ocean House, and they've never been in the back, and it's just a beautiful site, and it works out great. And I'm excited about what we were talking about earlier about the impending improvements of downtown and Mill Pond and that whole process. And hopefully next year, we can tie this all together and, maybe make the festival a little bit bigger footprint and tie that all together, because I think it's just going to be a fantastic amenity to the town. So I did attend the Celebration of Life event at the community center on Monday. It's a luncheon that is for, and your mother-in-law was there,
Yes.
Mrs. Rennie was there.
We talked
and-
about
and
you meeting her and everything.
I see her everywhere, it's great, but this is an event that's held for residents that are 80 years old and over. And there were about 120 residents there, and it was tremendous. So a nice luncheon, but it's, it's just a great event, so. Related
Thanks
to
for going.
that, and I happened to see Jens and Barbara Thorson at that event, I just want to extend, on behalf of the board, best wishes to Jens. He had a fall, so he's out of commission for a while, and I just want to extend a speedy recovery and best wishes to Jens and certainly to Barbara as well. And then just want to reiterate that FinCom has an opening, and the moderator, we do not appoint FinCom members, it's the town moderator that does. He's asked that we help to fill the slot, or at least to help to gain some interest in it, but there is an opening on FinCom that he would like to fill. So anybody that's interested, that has an interest or some expertise, that would be, please reach out. You can reach out to the board or to the town moderator. And then the last thing is, I just want to reiterate that Ashland is at a critical risk level relative to the EEE scenario, and the following protocols. This is an email we received tonight through our Board of Health, or our Health Department. Outdoor events must be scheduled to ensure that all fields are cleared by dusk from September 16th through the 21st. Dusk has been defined by the town of Ashland at 6:45 for that time period, and of course it gets adjusted each week,
15 minutes
right?
every
It's about
week or
15
something.
minutes, yeah.
So, food establishments are not allowed to utilize outdoor seating after dusk. Again, it's the same conditions for the 6:45. And Ashland Board of Health strongly recommends that residents avoid outdoor activities from dusk to dawn when mosquitoes are most active. And again, the same conditions, 6:45 is considered dusk. So, be careful, and if you have to be out, long sleeves, long pants, and spray. So that's my tune tonight, so I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
You don't want us to sing happy birthday, huh?
No.
Second.
A motion is second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.